Bonjour à tous, bonjour à toutes, ici Gabriel, encore une fois pour Destination New York. Aujourd'hui, pour le deuxième épisode de Destination New York Rencontre, on a discuté avec Caitlin Sowers, qui est une guide touristique à New York, mais aussi une passionnée d'art public, d'art de rue. Et on a discuté avec elle donc justement de sa passion pour l'art et également de comment la situation actuelle à New York de la COVID-19 a affecté son travail de guide touristique dans la ville, surtout qu'elle fait des tours guidés à travers le métro de la ville de New York. Alors, je vous invite à écouter cette discussion qu'on a eue ensemble le 28 mai dernier. Je vous souhaite une bonne écoute et on espère vous retrouver pour un prochain épisode de Destination New York Rencontre. So, hi, Caitlin. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, thank you again for accepting the invitation to do this little chat about the special project of COVID-19 in NYC. So I'll do a bit of background of yours. If I'm correct, you correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but you're actually from Pennsylvania, if I'm correct.
I am. Yep, I'm from very small town Pennsylvania.
And what town is it?
Well, it's outside of Pittsburgh, but it's about an hour and a half outside, and we have 4,000 residents, so it's a really tiny town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's even not a suburb; it's like the suburb of the suburb of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
All right, and as I can, you moved to New York a few years ago, if I'm correct.
I did.
All right,
Yep.
And as I saw on your profile, it was to pursue some studies in arts.
Yeah.
And what brought you in the arts, actually?
So when I was a child and even up to my teenage years, I was always really good at art. So whenever I was young, I always thought that I would be an art teacher. And that was really my goal in life, because whenever you're from Pennsylvania and you're from a small town, you don't really know what the art industry or the art world is like. So I did become an art teacher. I went to undergraduate school, got my bachelor's degrees in art education and fine arts. And I was an art teacher for 4 years. 3 years of those I spent down in Southern Maryland, which it was a really great, rewarding time of my life. And then I thought, well, I didn't want to do this forever, so I thought I would move to New York City and pursue a degree in the art world. And so I went to Sotheby's Institute of Art, which is located in Midtown. And my degree ended up being in art business. I spent 1 year in New York studying art business, and then 1 semester in London studying decorative and fine arts, which is basically like furniture and more like functional art pieces.
Okay, wow. And did you is your family in the arts as well, or it came out of your mind to go in the art field?
It was just me, yeah.
Just no influence from your family at all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. And I saw that before you come to New York, you worked at the Frank Lloyd Wright's Fallingwater House in Pennsylvania. Can you tell us about that? I saw it's a beautiful house from the 1930s, 1939,
Yeah.
if I'm correct. And can you tell us about this? What's the house and what were you doing over there?
Definitely. So Fallingwater is really the reason why I'm here today. When I was in college, I was working at a career services job, just like a work study position. And I noticed one day that there was a position posted that there was a tour guide opening at this house, Fallingwater, and it's a museum. And the house was constructed from 1936 and 1939, so you were spot on with that. But it's considered Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, and Frank Lloyd Wright is known as the first American architect because he came up with his own style of architecture, which he called organic architecture. So that basically meant that his homes were only designed for that specific location and had to be in tune with nature. And I, of course, living out in the rural area, really enjoy nature. And I just fell in love with the house. And so I worked there as a tour guide. I was taking groups of people of up to 14 people at a time through the house. We would do 1-hour tours and 2-hour tours. And what's really unique about the home is that, it was constructed in the 30s for the Kaufman family. They owned a department store in downtown Pittsburgh. So this was really their escape out into the wilderness and to get fresh air, because Pittsburgh was a steel city and there's a lot of smoke and smog with the steel. So they wanted to get away from that. And this was really their weekend retreat, which is phenomenal to have an architectural masterpiece as your weekend retreat.
Yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
yeah, today though, the house was donated in 1964 to the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. And so it has been run by them and run as a museum since then, but it includes all of the original artwork, all of the original furniture. We have one of the largest collections of Frank Lloyd Wright furniture that exists in the world. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, well, it looks amazing. Is it close to your small town you were saying before, or it's like where
It
it's
was,
at?
yeah, it was about about an hour drive away. So
Oh, yeah, okay.
I
Closer to
still had to
Pittsburgh,
commute to work.
or
Huh?
is it closer to Pittsburgh, or it's an hour drive, not
It's about 70
towards?
miles, so about
Okay,
a little under 2 hour drive.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
a nice retreat in the woods,
Yes.
as you say.
Yeah.
I'll put a picture of the house on screen right now,
Oh,
actually.
great. Yeah.
And what I don't know for you. I am a tour guide as well, as I told you before,
Mhm.
in New York, and most of my friends are like surprised when I tell them this because I'm a very quiet person. And what interested you in giving tours? Is it to share arts, or it was another another thing that brought you in the giving tours at the house and in New York?
So I've always been interested in public speaking. I love talking to groups of people and giving knowledge. I'm very confident in front of groups of any type of people. And that was one thing that I learned a lot at Fallingwater, was learning how to approach international people, or maybe somebody that has a hearing impairment, or, you know, working with children versus elderly adults. So it was really nice to have that opportunity. Sorry, my cat. There we go. It was nice to have that opportunity to meet new groups of people and learn how to speak to them. I could speak to my peers whenever I was younger in high school and in college, but that was really an open gateway for me. So from that tour guide experience, I thought this would be great for teaching. And so, you know, teaching my students then the 4 years after that, because really I worked at Fallingwater as my college job and then became a high school teacher for 4 years.
Mhm.
So then when I came to New York, I thought, well, what can I do that I'm good at? And that was really something I thought, you know, I could grow my own business. I could take people to places that I want to see and things that interest me, and they could understand my passion. So I think it really started with the root of public speaking and how much I enjoy that, and then kind of grew into my passion for art.
Yeah, you linked them together with your
Yep.
tours in New York. You said speaking to people internationally coming. I saw on your Airbnb Experience page that first you have very good reviews, so good job for
Thank you.
that. Also,
Yeah.
that you receive people from all over the world. I saw many from the States, some from Canada, Europe, and Israel, and all over the world. So good job also for that. When did you start to giving those tours in New York in the subways?
So I started in January of last year.
Okay.
So sadly, you know, with COVID and everything, I was having a very successful winter. This past winter, I think being established for a year at this point, getting the good reviews. I had quite a few tours in February, and then in March I had a lot booked prior to the European travel ban.
Hmm.
And then, of course, at that point in time, I pretty much, you know, lost most of the people that were coming on my tour. But most of the people were European. I did have a few people from Israel and Australia, from China. So I do enjoy, you know, speaking to these people. And also, I'm an avid traveler, so I love whenever people come on my tour, and I'm like, I've been to your country, I've been to your town, and they just really love that.
Yeah, obviously it makes a good connection with you as well, a special connection with you for them. What brought you in the subway art, especially because there's a lot of street art as well in New York, but you specify most in the subway art. So what brought you in that type of art?
Yeah. So when I first moved to New York City, I lived in Bushwick. I lived there for a year, and that was while I was at Sotheby's Institute. So it was really great because Bushwick is known as one of the street art, you know, areas of New York City. There's the Bushwick Collective, and there's tons of walls full of murals. And I fell in love with that area, obviously, when I first moved here. But I also noticed that every weekend there were always graffiti tours going on, or street art tours. And when you log on Airbnb or you log online at TripAdvisor or any other website, it's street art tour this, street art tour that. And I thought, I love street art. I actually write for a street art magazine called Up Magazine, as one of my friends owns the magazine. So I'm definitely into the street art community, and my artwork in the background, I collect street art prints as well. So I love street art. It's more of my interest though, whereas my passion lies more in public art. So public art, in difference to street art, is, usually a commissioned work of art or something that is, commissioned by the city and placed for the public. And I always had a passion for it because public art was meant to be seen by everyone. It was meant to be understood and enjoyed by everyone. So you have, everyone from a small child to the CEO of a company. Doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor. It doesn't matter what your background is in the arts. That's what public art is there for, is for your enjoyment. And so I think I always loved that idea of public art being for everybody. And when I started at Sotheby's Institute, I had to create a project. And I thought my project would be a public art locator app. So I actually kind of designed an app. I came up with a business plan. I had to write like a 50-page business plan. Oh. But in the meantime of doing this, of course, I started looking at all of the public art in New York City and seeing what was out there. And there's one issue with public art, is that you don't have any information. When you walk up to a public sculpture in Central Park or anywhere, there's no plaque that tells you what the artist's, intent was, or, what the purpose of it was. Was it early in this artist's career? Was it late in this career? Where did they live? The context of art is very important. And that's one thing that I always try to tell my students, is that if you don't understand art, and a lot of people think they don't understand art, you have to know the context. Was this artist living in Germany during World War II? That's clearly going to impact their intent and their context for their works. So I thought with my app, I would then tell people what the context was and get them to appreciate it more, because that's all what art appreciation is just understanding. In turn, I noticed that there were tons of public pieces in the subway. And there are actually more than 300 works underneath our feet at many different stations in all 5 boroughs. And so I started basically becoming addicted to finding these works and going to different stations and seeing what was available. So they were all put in place by the MTA Arts and Design program. And that started basically in like 1983 was whenever they first started the arts and design program. But the first work of art wasn't placed until 1986.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, it's crazy that they've commissioned 300 works of art in the last, 35 years. But it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so you must have covered most of the subway stations in the city to find those.
All right. I've been to a lot. Yeah.
And do you have one specific, one favorite piece of art in the subway, or one station that stands out?
It's hard to say, because there are really a lot of phenomenal pieces. And when I take people on tour, we usually see about 12 different works of art. But one that's definitely a favorite of mine, as well as other people, is on the Q train on 72nd Street. So this is in the Upper East Side. There's a work called Perfect Strangers by Vic Muniz. And Vic Muniz is a Brazilian artist, and often you don't see international artists creating works for the MTA. So he's a little bit of an anomaly. But the work is about Vic photographing people that you would meet on the subway platform. So he essentially photographed people, and it's everyone from a small child in a Superman outfit to actually his own son named Bastion, who's wearing like a Tony the Tiger mascot uniform. And there's, a policeman, and there are musicians, and there's all kinds of different people that are created in mosaic form. And the mosaics that were created because this station opened in 2017. They are phenomenal. They are beautiful mosaics. So that's one of the last stops on my tour, because I love to show people how far we've come with mosaics. A lot of people just think of the old school style, but it's kind of like a modern mosaic.
Nice, very nice. I'll try to take a look at this
Yeah.
on my next trip. Have you taken the tour of the New York City Hall station, the closed City Hall station under the...
So I haven't taken that tour because you have to be an MTA museum member. So they have the Transit Museum, which is located in downtown Brooklyn, which I definitely recommend. My friend actually works there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's a great museum. I love that it's in an old station, and that, they have all of the old subway cars, and you can see the advertisements and how things were. It's really like stepping back in time. But you have to be a member in order to get to the City Hall. And sadly, I really should be a member. I should probably do that later today, but I'm not. And I, though, take my tours through City Hall. So I haven't been able to actually get off the train and go into the City Hall station, but I've rode through the station dozens of times at this point. So I definitely love it, but it's really a unique opportunity.
Yeah. It's beautiful though. So I suggest anyone to take the train and do the loop, do the U-turn, just to stay to see it. You said you had pretty much a lot of tours planned in March. So your last tour was early March, I guess, mid-March.
Yeah, I had one person that was brave enough to go with me on like March 13th.
Oh, okay, just
but
before.
She was a local New Yorker, so I just texted her and said like, hey, do you still want to go? And she's like, yeah. And then it ended up being a great tour. It was just a one-on-one tour. Yeah.
And did you stay in New York afterwards, or did you go back to Pennsylvania, your hometown?
I'm still in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So did you have a special... I know there was a lot of talks about the rent and stuff, because most people cannot work anymore. On the other side, some are lucky to work from home. And did you? And if it's too personal, I can skip to another question. But did you have a break on your rent or postpone rent to help you?
No. So there have been rent protests going on actually in my neighborhood. So I live in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, which is on basically the bottom right corner of Prospect Park. So I'm located in central Brooklyn. And this area is very diverse. And it's also a really great community. I've enjoyed being part of the community here and learning more about it. I've been in Prospect Lefferts for about a year and a half after I left. I left Bushwick, went to London, and then moved back to New York. But it's been really great. I will say though, I would love a pause on rent. That would be an amazing thing. But I don't think that it's going to happen. So I've read a little bit more about it, obviously in hopes that I would have a rent pause.
Yeah.
But based on the way that things go, that our rent basically pays the mortgage, which ultimately ends up paying for community access to, hospitals and teachers and things like that. So I've learned a little bit more about it. Not enough that I could actually explain it on video, but enough that I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not going to get out of paying my rent at this point, and that's all right.
And were you still, can you still work from home? Are you still? Okay.
So my full-time job is actually working in the design industry, which is basically working in furniture.
Okay.
And so that's really that's why I said I started out at Fallingwater, fell in love with architecture and furniture design, especially mid-century stuff. And then I came here to pursue that. So my job right now, I work for a company called Floss, which is an Italian lighting company.
Okay.
And my role with them is being the retail and trade education manager. So I teach people about our products and work with salespeople in order to educate them. That really has been put on pause. I haven't been able to fully do my job, but now that some of the retail locations around the country are coming back, we're doing online trainings rather than me going to see them in Chicago or LA. So it's a bit of an adjustment, but I started this job in February. So that was definitely interesting too. I just hit my 90 days at my job and I'm like, well, I haven't been able to do what my job description said, but I'm happy to still have my job and I really love the company.
Yeah, and your past job, do you think you would have kept it during this pause, during the pandemic, or you would most likely would lose that job?
Well, my last job that I left, my friend took over for me, and he still has his job. However, most of the other people in my old workplace were laid off.
Oh yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah,
So your move was kind of right on time, and yeah, you're fortunate.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. And, it's sad because the tours are really my passion, and that's my way of teaching people on a, usually on the weekends or on weeknights. I'm always flexible for whenever anyone wants a tour. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I do miss talking to people about, the artwork and why public art is so important and, why the subway is actually great and not terrible. And so I do, I really miss out on that.
Yeah, obviously that would you say that's the most difficult thing for now on your tour guide side, not being able to speak to people?
Yeah, because that's really what I'm good at and that's what I enjoy doing and it makes me happy. So I miss that. And also, whenever you do have a side job, usually it's because you need the money. And it's very, difficult to live in New York City with this like New York hustle, trying to make ends meet. And so I've been doing okay, with still having a salary, but, I definitely relied on that money.
Yeah, no, I can understand.
Yeah.
About concerning your studies, were you done with the studies?
Yeah. I graduated with my master's degree last March.
This March?
Yes. Oh, no.
No,
Last
March
March.
2019.
1 year ago. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, not bad. I was wondering what's happening with the studies. Do you have friends that are still studying and right now? Is it on pause or do you know anything about that?
So I have a few students that are currently in college and in undergrad that have been on pause for a while. I think most of them at this point, it's May 28th now. So they have pretty much just ended courses. And they're waiting to see what's going to happen for the fall. I know there have been some protests that people are trying to get their tuition back because it's not what they paid for, which I totally agree with. It's 100% different going from in-classroom instruction compared to online instruction. And I'm almost thankful that I'm not a teacher right now because being an art teacher and teaching online would be impossible.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure my students either wouldn't complete the work or, wouldn't be motivated. It's hard for me to be motivated right now just to do my own artwork, let alone, if I were a student of art. Yeah.
I was asking you before if you have a favorite station, where is the most beautiful art and or just most beautiful station. Do you have, on the other hand, an ugliest station in the city?
Yes.
Not necessarily on the cleaning side, but just one that's...
Yeah. So my most hated artwork, and I feel bad I don't even know who the artist is because I don't like it that much that I can't retain the information, is the 28th Street station on the NQRW line. And so a lot of the artworks have some context based on their location. So like the 23rd Street station, which is a great station, has a bunch of different hats on the wall. And the hats also have a small plaque at the bottom that tells you who owned the hat and what their occupation was. But all the hats are famous Madison Avenue residents because the NQRW line was the original Madison Avenue line. Okay. So they all have like a correlation with their location. The 28th Street spot right after 23rd used to be the toy district. So the artist created what they called as like toys, but as if they were people standing on the subway platform. And they're very abstract and they're really random. And I don't feel like they were really communicated well. I think it's a station that people would look at and be like, huh. and then just move on and not think about it. What I love about public art is when people actually look at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with public art, is that people often ignore it. And so I think the 28th Street Station doesn't help my cause of like explaining to people like why public art is so great. But yeah, it's definitely my least favorite. And we ride by it whenever we are on my tour. And everyone's like, what is that? And I'm like, no, please, like, I don't want to talk about this. But yeah, so I'm sorry to whoever designed that one, but it's really my least favorite.
Yeah, shout out to the artist.
Yeah.
Definitely. I saw that now New York City is the last part in the state to reopen. Everywhere in New York State is starting the phase 1 of reopening, which is good news, even though we're not done yet. Are you planning to start as soon as it's possible?
I hope to. We've been in lockdown since mid-March, and they're hoping that we might be able to reach phase 1 by June 15th. And phase 1 really is just construction and manufacturing. So that doesn't impact me at this point in time. But, there's 2 weeks in between each phases if we continue on a good path, obviously. Like, they're not just going to move to phase 2 if it's not okay. But phase 2, I believe, is like retail and a few other things. So I'm hoping at that point Airbnb will allow us to reopen. That would be really great. I know that they'll probably have some things in place. I also have my tour and TripAdvisor, and both platforms have paused in-person experiences for the time being. I did have a lot of local New Yorkers on my tour mixed in with all of the international visitors. So I'm hoping that the local New Yorkers will want to come out and do something different. However, with the amount of unemployment at this point in time, I don't think that people are going to have a lot of extra income to be doing experiences and tours where they should be spending money on food and rent.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So, yeah, that's kind of the hard part. I will definitely be there and I will be available. I'd be happy to even give a couple of free tours just to like, get back in the game.
Just to start again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to allow people that are struggling with money to do the tour. Yeah. It's very nice that some local New Yorkers do the tour. It's something like they go in the subway every day and you don't notice the artwork, but with a tour they can acknowledge and appreciate the artwork. It's very nice that some local do your tour.
Yeah, they love it too. They really say that it opens their eyes to what is around them because we're all in a rush here. Everyone's in a rush to get from point A to point B, and they never stop and look. They'll be like, I've been in New York for 10 years and never noticed this. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. And there's 300 more, around you. So definitely keep your eyes open.
Yeah, definitely. And I might have seen some of your, some of the artwork and never noticed it as well, because I don't take the time to watch the walls, and you just, like, as you say, focus on point A to point B.
Yeah.
What do you think will be the most different after the crisis for you as a tour guide?
I honestly feel like maybe it's the hesitation, just due to my tour being on the subway. So, the subways have always been dirty. I love that part of it. Now they're being cleaned every day from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So that's really great. And actually they're using this really cool UV light technology to clean the subways. And then they're also cleaning the stations. So, the stations are closed, the subways are closed. So I'm hoping that will allow people, to want to come. But I think the hesitation of getting on the subway, people have been avoiding riding on the subway, and they've been told not to because the subway is supposed to only be for essential workers right now. I'm guilty of riding the subway. In the last few weeks, I can't not ride the subway. But there's definitely been other locals on it besides for essential workers. But, it's supposed to be reserved just for those people. And so I think the people will be hesitant to ride the subway with me. And I think too, like, just being on a tour with other people, there's many people that are self-isolating and that they don't want to come in contact with any strangers. So luckily, I was sick in March, and I believe that I had COVID-19 in March.
Okay.
And I got tested for the antibodies and it came back positive, but I got tested for the swab test for the coronavirus and it came back negative. And this was a few weeks ago. So I hope that I had it. Me and a few friends that I was with in the second week of March, we all got sick the third week of March.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we all tested positive for antibodies.
So that would
So
make sense.
yeah, I think I feel like I have a little bit of a shield. I mean, maybe that's naive, but I'm ready to embrace being in New York again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, there's less hesitation because I think they say immunity might last 6 months. Well, I still have a few months before I might get sick again. So for me, I'm ready to jumpstart and get out there and talk to people. But there might be some people that don't want to be within 6 feet of me and don't want to ride the subway.
Yeah. Yeah, because they said the subway was a big part of the transmission in the community in New York, I guess. So I guess it can impact your tour. I hope it's not going to be too long before you can start back, because I understand you're passionate about it, and I can understand you want to get back on track as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel, and I don't want to get too political here, but do you feel the governor and the mayor handled the situation pretty well with the lockdown and what they did from the day one?
Yeah, I think that Governor Cuomo has been, a ray of sunshine in this terrible time. I often listen to his daily briefings a few times a week. They were longer at first, and back in, about 2 months ago, I was watching them religiously, and I really enjoy seeing how strong and prepared he has been in a place where we have no idea what's coming and when this is going to end. I feel like he's done a great job. Mayor de Blasio has not really been visible during this time. I haven't really seen too much from him or about him other than criticism, with people saying that he's not doing a great job. And of course, like with social distancing, there have been a lot of people that are minorities that are getting citations for not social distancing, even though there are still a ton of white people in the city and we're not getting the citations. So, that's some things that he's been criticized for. But I think there's been a lot of fear in this situation, and Cuomo has done a really great job to help with that. And I was really happy the other day. I watched one of his briefings, and we had just gotten under the 100-person mark of deaths per day. And so he was saying, as sad as that is, there were still like 89 people that died that day. And he was like, but to be at this point in time, we're finally like on the downward slope. And if you look at the numbers of infections and the deaths, we are past the peak at this point. Will there be another peak? It could happen. We'll wait and see. But I think a lot of New Yorkers were infected since January and we had no idea. So I think that there is a lot of herd immunity going on here, whereas like a lot of people, including myself, I was never tested for COVID-19 in March. So I'm not included in those tallies. I'm not sure if my antibody test, has been included in the numbers. It's a little confusing right now, and I think it's confusing for everyone, but I was not in the original grouping, and I think there were a lot of asymptomatic or people that had flu-like symptoms like I did. I didn't have respiratory symptoms. I didn't have a high fever. I think at one point it was like 99 degrees for maybe a day. But then when more information started coming out in late March and early April saying, well, those aren't the only symptoms, then I was like, oh, maybe I had it, and then, tested positive for the antibodies anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I think also it spread a lot more than what the numbers say, and that's why I guess they're doing the tests in New York. I saw it was very kind of easy to get those tests, serological, I guess, to see if you have the antibodies in you. Here they are starting to talk about getting the test someday in a few weeks or few months. I think it will help a lot to see how many people might have been infected by the coronavirus.
Definitely.
Compared to the yeah, and if you have the antibodies, as you said, it's kind of like a shield. I guess you feel more confident about all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Maybe it's false confidence, but
But it's good.
I'll take it, you
It's
know?
good for the mental health.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what do you miss the most during the lockdown that you're in now? And what are you looking for, apart from the giving the tours again? What do you miss the most? What do you look forward the most to the after crisis?
I miss the food. So I have been an avid takeout person during the crisis. You know, I'm supporting all of my local restaurants and I hate to cook. So I don't like to cook at all. Really, what I've done during this coronavirus is just order frozen meals and I cook frozen meals. But you know, I've always just been a person that thought like other people cook better than I do, and I know that their food tastes better, so why don't I eat that food? So I miss sitting down in a restaurant or going to a bar and being social with either friends or other people around me. And you know, a lot of the great restaurants are closed and they're
Mm-hmm.
not doing takeout, so I definitely miss that. One of my favorite things to do in the summer is to go to Smorgasburg, which is like a local food festival. Basically, it happens every Saturday and Sunday in the summertime.
And
But
where is it located? Sorry.
yeah, Saturdays it's in Williamsburg.
Okay.
So it's on like Kent, I think it's Kent Avenue. But it's like an outdoor food festival. You have different vendors that come, and some of these vendors only do smorgasburg. So you can only get their food there. It's not like a restaurant food. You know, they have a booth and that's what they make. One of them is this called Burger Supreme. And it's the best burger I've ever had. It's so phenomenal. And I miss that. And so on Sundays, it's in Prospect Park and it's literally a 10-minute walk from my house. And so I'm definitely ready to go back to Smorgasburg.
Yeah, but at least
and
it's
have the food that I
outside.
can't make.
At least it's outside. You might have chances that it's coming back sooner than actual restaurants.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you again, Caitlin, for doing this. Very appreciated. Very appreciated from me and from the viewers, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So if you want to, if some people want to follow you, I'll link your Instagram, and you have also an Instagram art page you told me
Yes.
about. And what do you post on that page?
So I started that when I was at Sotheby's Institute. And really what I like to do is just walk around and take a look at the street art and public art. And I post both things equally. But really the point was to educate people on what it's about. So I usually have like a longer paragraph underneath the photo about who the artist is and what the concept is. And I get a little personal on there too. I try to, you know, make people see from my viewpoint. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was really a side project just to get me out and looking at art in New York and getting to know the artists. And that's really helped me with like my street art interest and building my repertoire of street artists around the city.
Cool. So yeah, I'll link that account also on the video, as well as your Airbnb and TripAdvisor pages, so that people, when the lockdown is over and when the New York is open again to the tourists, people can book your tour. I'll definitely give you a call someday when I'm going back in the city as a tourist, not as a tour guide, to get that on the tour with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right. So thank you a lot again, and we'll talk again later, Caitlin.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.